Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sportsball Podcast. I'm your host today, Zach, followed by my co-hosts, Nate and Andy. And we are here once again for episode 8 of the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports. It's been a minute, so you'll have to forgive the awkward intros and the getting back into the swing of things. Before we get into anything else, obviously we got to start with the announcement that if you haven't seen on our socials, if you don't follow us on our socials, first of all, you should do that. We make sure to update everybody there with all of the news and updates of things. And we did specify that when we started going full-time, full year, that, format changes may be abound. So that's what this announcement is about. We're starting with our first format change, which is that we're going to start going bi-weekly starting with this episode. So this one should come out, I believe, on the 12th. That is correct. The 12th of April. So then the next episode won't actually be until the 26th. So try to pack more content in now that baseball is kind of starting to get into the swing of things, pun intended. As we're starting to get into the swing of things with baseball, there's a lot of daily stories that happen, but we're going to try to recap the big ones over the course of a couple weeks. So this probably won't last forever. I know once football comes around, we'll probably go back to weekly just because I know football and basketball are more of our comfortable sports, the things that we're more knowledgeable on. But as we go, this may change in 2 months too. So who knows? We're just here to have fun with it. So we'll see. But anyway, to actually get into the meat of the episode, let's get, we're going to talk about the March Madness tournament, since that's the last time we talked was the beginning of the March Madness tournament. So now we're at the end of it with the championship games, both men and women's. We've got some MLB news with opening day happening, as well as something for me, more Formula One stuff. Yay. And then just some other fun ones in there. So let's get started with NCAA basketball. And I'm going to actually flip the script because you thought we were going to talk about men's basketball first, but we're going to talk about the women's championship game first because Iowa and South Carolina, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. I was like, I said that earlier and then I forgot to look it up. Iowa and South Carolina finished off the season with South Carolina beating Iowa to cap off a perfect season for the women's team. But of course, the headline coming out of that would be, Caitlin Clark finishing off her career at Iowa, playing by far, in my opinion, one of the best games of just in general basketball that I think I've ever seen. And I only, unfortunately, got to watch the first half. I was driving back home that day, so I listened to the second half. But sounds like she played a really good game. But if you guys watch that game, I'm going to pass it to you guys for your takes for it because if nothing else, Caitlin Clark is like a generational player that we have to follow, I think, at this point. So I might pass it to you guys. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. Kind of the final four of the women's, you had NC State, UConn, Iowa, and South Carolina with that. And I think kind of the South Carolina NC State game was kind of a blowout. South Carolina
2-point game at halftime. But...
Yeah, and then slowly pulled away in the.
I think it was a 24-point game going into the fourth quarter. So.
The third and fourth quarter. So South Carolina proved why they were undefeated, and the Iowa UConn game was really, really special watching Caitlin and Paige go back and forth, kind of shot for shot. With that, Iowa ultimately wins, and then you have Caitlin Clark versus undefeated Dawn Stanley in South Carolina, and South Carolina kind of like what they did against NC State. First half, the first two quarters pretty close, neck and neck. Caitlin Clark came out scored 18 in the first quarter. And then, second half, they just kind of kept slowly chipping away. Iowa made some runs in the third, fourth quarters, but, South Carolina ultimately just kept pulling away more and more. And, it's really fun to see that, the women's game is growing substantially. And if you look at the TV rating numbers for both the Iowa UConn game and the Iowa South Carolina game, the Iowa UConn game had 14.2 million viewers across ESPN. Like there's app, ESPN Plus, all those things combined. And then you get to the championship game where it skyrocketed another 4 million up to like 18 point something million viewers. Both of those shattering records. It's the most watched women's game ever. It's the most watched college basketball game, I think, ever. I'd have to double check ESPN stats, but it surpassed a lot of sporting events, even including NBA finals before. So it helps to have, when you have stars in the game like you do with Caitlin, Paige, Angel Reese, a lot of these stars that help grow the women's game. And, you look at the accomplishments and what they did and everything, and then you kind of look towards the future is now that all these women are going to the WNBA, they're going on to better things. And, now it's, who's going to be the next star for the women's game. And especially for, Iowa's case, if you look at their next season, it's like, how does Iowa come back with now you lose Caitlin Clark? Are they going to be the same team? Are people going to pay attention to the WNBA more? Are they going to pay more attention to women's college basketball? Looking for the next Caitlin Clark type star going forward. So that's kind of what we enjoyed this season. We enjoyed watching the finals. It was super fun. And even from Nebraska women's perspective, watching Jazz Shelley, Alexis Morakowski all these seasons, super super fun to watch both those women just ball out and have great season for Nebraska. But now you're kind of at a pivotal point of the women's season is you have all these stars leaving, and what's going to happen next season? Are people going to be still as enthused going forward, trying to, like I said, well, look for the next star? Or are they just going to be like, now we'll just wait until, people start telling us that there's a next Caitlin Clark type player coming up, so on and so forth. So going to be really interested to see next year, especially from the women's side, just who, how does the viewership translate from this season to the next season? Is it just going to get more people hooked into the game that they just start watching more and more without having these types of stars, or so on and so forth? But I mean, I think you can apply that to any sport too, is, people watch sports, one, for their team, local regionality type thing, but you also watch it for the stars of any sport that you want to watch. It helps to have these type of players keep you engaged and keep you enthused in the game. And I mean, you can hate. Caitlin Clark kind of reminds me of like the hate that she gets is kind of like the Christian Laettner type-esque hate, where they were just so dominant in what they did, but people just hated them because of their ego, their personality, the antics on the floor, the team that they played for, so on and so forth. And a lot of similarities. Yeah, I mean, obviously us from a local interest that we just hate Iowa in general, but
it's hard to hate on Caitlin Clark as a player, though.
Yeah,
I get it. It just is. As much as we meme here that screw Iowa, it's tough.
She's super fun at what she did, and you can hate the antics that she did, and I mean that's any Duke player ever at the same time. That's why most people hate Duke, is because Christian Laettner, Grayson Allen, Kyle Filipowski, Nate.
He's alive.
But yeah, I mean, going forward, I mean, she is going to be an absolute star in the WNBA, and hopefully that's kind of what helps get people interested in the WNBA, because they're a summer league, so their leagues I think start in May or something like that. Obviously they don't run traditional with the basketball season, because if you do that, you're competing with football, the NBA, the NFL, so on and so forth. And so trying to get people to pay attention to women professional sports during the main sports season, like when basketball usually is played, is a little bit tougher. So, hopefully going forward, that's an advantage for the WNBA, is that since they're in the summer with really baseball is your only competition, is hopefully you can attract some of those viewers to watch, Caitlin Clark type stars, the Angel Reese's, the Paige Becker, or I think Beckers. I've never learned how to say her last name, but hopefully to watch those stars in the summer going forward. But yeah, going back to the games, they were incredible to watch. And then Dawn Staley, just an incredible coach at South Carolina. She's only lost 3 total games at South Carolina, which is an incredible feat, all things considered. That deservedly so, that they had a perfect unblemished record going into the game, won the championship in that. But yeah, I think it's kind of my thoughts of Caitlin Clark. Super fun to watch. I kind of have the same mentality that I do with Patrick Mahomes. Is I could acknowledge that he's a great player. He just absolutely sucks for the team that he plays for.
But once he goes to the NBA, you don't have to worry about it.
Then, but that's never going to happen with Mahomes, though. He's already there. But,
well, I can't fix that for you, Andy.
But I mean, it's definitely going to get me interested more in trying to watch the WNBA more, trying to watch what Caitlin Clark does and see what these stars do in the college game if it translates to the WNBA. Because I can't say I've watched enough WNBA to know that it's the same difficulty to adapt from college to the NBA level. You have all these NBA college stars, but not all of them pan out super well in the NBA, just because it's such a different brand and league of basketball, and just types of different physicality and everything. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the men's side. But pass it to you, Nate. Your thoughts of the GOAT, Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add on top of that. I mean, she clearly best player in women's basketball this year. Just had kind of the unfortunate happenstance of running into the best team in women's college basketball. So it's hard to really take away too much from her accomplishments this year. Clearly, she was just miles above. Took a not a bad Iowa team, but not a superstar Iowa team to pretty big heights, and she's great TV, great to watch, great for the game, great for representation. It is cool to see a player, and I mean, as much as we don't like Iowa, she's a kid from Des Moines, Iowa that making the most of it and making the Midwest look good. So
you always root for the small town kids. And I mean, I know Des Moines is not small, but it's Iowa, and same thing you'd say coming from Nebraska. Like if somebody's on that level, whatever
you appreciate it at least.
You appreciate that, yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, you think about the blue bloods of women's basketball. I mean, you have UConn and South Carolina, and I mean, off the top of my head, those are really the two major ones of recent note that are your powerhouse blue bloods. And you would never in a million years think of Iowa as an up and coming powerhouse due to one player creating all that success for them. So it's amazing. Like you said, Nate, just to see someone that, sticks close to home, stays with the home program, and builds it to what it was and what it is right now.
Yep. Because she, I believe, had the chip on her shoulder that UConn did to reach out to recruit her. But I mean, she could have gone just about anywhere else, I imagine. And she chose to stay home. And, that's always a really cool story when you are that good and you're able to, bring your kind of hometown team to new heights like that. So that's always refreshing to see. And yeah, I do not know quite as much about the WNBA either to know or really be able to evaluate how the transition from college basketball to WNBA goes, but I have a feeling that she'll be a mainstay. I think she seems like she's got that, if nothing else, the work ethic to get there, and she's already got a little talent behind her. I think so. I mean, I think she'll be all right.
She's this generation's. I don't know if you guys. Well, I mean, obviously you probably know who she is, but I don't know if you remember when Candace Parker was coming up. She's the same way, and to me, she was the last female basketball athlete that I can think of. And this might just be an ignorant take on my part, to be honest. I'll admit that straight up, but she's the last one I remember. I saw on ESPN all the time, and this was in the early 2000s. This was in 2006, 2007. And people were like, she's going to change the game of basketball. And then WNBA. And I think she really did. The problem was and I say this not trying to be jokey or memey or anything, but she went to the WNBA and then nobody really watches it. And so her impact, I think, was still big in the WNBA, but not the same. I think Caitlin Clark, especially nowadays where it's easier, you have kids with their cell phones and stuff that are watching sports all the time.
And that was going to be my thing too, Zach, is, you know, the avenues to watch sports now is
So much easier.
streaming. It's like you have, you know, Fox, FS1, ESPN Plus. Like you have all these new avenues to watch sports and all these new streaming services that it's just so accessible now. You know, years ago, that's probably what hindered a lot of the WNBA. And now you can going forward. I mean, I'm pretty sure ESPN still has the rights to the WNBA, but they have so many more avenues to get the, you know, WNBA games out now. And yeah, it helps having your season during the dead season of, you know, competing with just baseball, and that's it.
Especially if you have fans like me before this year. We'll get to this, but that weren't a big fan of baseball. It's like, I want something else to watch, you know, and now I've decided to take on every other sport that I've never watched, so I'll just throw that on there too, I guess. But like, I think the other thing that, and you mentioned it, Andy, already, is that like, you know, from here, you know, college basketball for the women's side was the highest watched thing. And I've actually got the numbers right here. So women pulled in 18.87 million for the women's championship game. The men's last night pulled in 14.82. Regardless of what you think, that's impressive, just in a general sense. That's huge. And so, you know, with the ease of avenues to watching WNBA, what I wonder is, what does college basketball on the women's front look like next year? Because not only was Caitlin Clark the big one, but you know, you guys mentioned the one from South Carolina, and then is it Angel Reese from LSU? So, I mean, you've got those three who are already big personalities. I'm not saying that like it's going to fall off a cliff next year, but you know, is that the thing? Do they start trying to find the next Caitlin Clark, the next, or I guess in the Nebraska case, the next Jazz Shelley? Do they try to find? And I think it's going to take a hit next year, only because it's going to be a year of trying to figure out who is that next big star. But I mean, at that point, you just got to start shooting threes like Caitlin Clark does, where she shoots it from almost half court.
And that's,
like, if I tried to do that now, no shot.
And that's what I think it helps. I mean, it helps grow the game too, because, you know, for our generation, at least, I think, you know, LeBron obviously continued his success, but I think, you know, Steph Curry, you know, was our big superstar when we, at least, I don't know about you guys, but at least for me growing up, you know, Steph Curry was one of the guys that, like, yeah, he's taking these ridiculous threes. It's kind of, you know, the way that the NBA went. And, you know, see a lot of kids like with Steph Curry jerseys on taking these ridiculous threes. And it's like, okay, so who do the women now have that equivalent? And now you're seeing it with little girls with Caitlin Clark jerseys on and so on and so forth. So hopefully that's just kind of, you know, their version of a Steph Curry, of their kind of mentor to want to grow up and be like Caitlin Clark. And, you know, yeah, I want to grow up and be like MJ, for example. You know, that type of, you know, modeling for getting kids into women's sports, kids into, you know, sports that they want to grow up and be like their idol. Now, Caitlin Clark is this idol for the women's side growing up, kind of like what, you know, we had with Steph Curry and kind of the guys that are in the game now. But that's kind of my take on that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, she has probably just as much potential to change the game like Steph did. I mean, I mean, the 3-point shot was it was there. And it was definitely utilized up until Steph kind of made his splash. But like,
and to
see just how much the entire game has changed. Everyone, a lot of teams will model their entire offense over just taking 3-pointers. Jack Golke doesn't shoot 2-pointers.
All of 18 pointers the entire year.
And she has that personality, that talent that, I mean, whatever direction she wants to go, she has the potential to, you know, make some big waves going forward. And it's cool to just be able to see that. So,
yeah. Well, and like, you know, a bunch of people have been like, up until they lost, I guess, I saw a bunch of people mocking her for like on the court antics. And don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily agree with everything that she does. Like, I say this about all basketball stars, just in this specific sense, but I mean, I say this about all like sports stars. If a ref calls something, just shush and then, go back to where you need to be and do your thing, like quit. But that's the game now. Like people do that all the time. And like, I get it.
Like Nate's point guard complaining after every drive for a foul.
But like on the flip side of those things, though, it's like these are highly competitive individuals. And like, in high school, it's one thing, your coaches in high school say, hey, don't do that because you want to instill in the idea of sportsmanship, all that stuff. At the college level, it becomes way different. And it's like, at the college level, it becomes more competitive and much about more. Not that high school isn't about anything, but like, it's that next level. And if you're not competitive and aren't taking the game that seriously, you're not going to reach the next level. And in Caitlin Clark's instance, yeah, could she have, been a little bit better on the court, quote unquote? Sure, maybe. But like, you're asking competitive people to not be competitive. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe she could be a little bit better, but it's also like, if that's what brings more people to the sport, lean into it, I guess. Or,
sports need villains too. If you want to view her as a villain, I mean, it's villains make stories. And
on the flip side of it, though, if everything we've been taught to believe as we come up in the sportsmanship idea is that the refs are always right, which they're not. But they're human. They're not. But I mean, but like if the refs are the one that call the game, then they need to start calling stuff out so it stops. I mean, it's a two-way street. So
yeah, that's Rudy Gobert.
Scott Foster's never been wrong in his life.
Just ask Chris. I was gonna say, just ask Chris Paul about Scott Foster. With that, though, weird segue, but it's good. It's a segue nonetheless. Let's go to the men's. And I will just give the rundown there with Purdue, the Big Ten, Madness. Purdue losing. Yeah, we'll go back through the March Madness stuff, but just for the we're recording this the day after the championship game. Purdue lost to UConn last night, 75-60. I unfortunately didn't watch it because up until about halftime I forgot it was on. So
all you needed to know was that every single UConn game this entire tournament happened the exact same way. First half was close. Second half, they won by 15 or more. It's just like they were an absolute dominant. And I know they showed the graphic last night is, we thought last year's UConn team was like, an absolute dominant force of winning the championship. And then they compared it to this year's UConn team, and I think they had a better point differential in the tournament this year compared to last year. And it's like they had Adam Sanogo and some other player that's in the NBA now. But I'm like, there's no way like this UConn team can be better than statistic-wise than last year's team, and they were. But I mean, they were. That was like if you weren't conference cheering like I was for Purdue. I mean, just UConn, how they move the ball, how they play basketball is so fluid and just like everybody knows what they're doing. They move the ball so quick. It's like you have no time to get set up on defense because they move the ball so much. They're so smooth with it too. And as much as you want to hate Dan Hurley, and I hate Dan Hurley because I think he's a guy. Well, I'll just say that he's a guy. And for him, it's like. Zach, you didn't watch the second half. Nate, did you see him like push his own player?
Yeah.
It was like a minute left in the game, but he wanted, I think, Cam Spencer to run the offense. So
he wanted him on defense. He wanted him closer.
He steps out onto the court in front of the ref. It pushes him. And I'm like, Dan, this isn't practice, buddy.
Man's into the game.
But, it's
basketball guy.
He is a true basketball guy to where I think from what I've heard, like in interviews and like people that have talked to him, like he's such like a normal, like, cool guy in a sense. But like, I think once the competitiveness like switch flips on for him, he turns into a total JA. And it's like, you absolutely hate that dude.
I mean, you don't get that far. You don't get that far as a basketball coach. At minimum, you don't get to the championship game without something.
Right, and I mean, he's a great coach.
That's a little far. Pushing your own player on the court is a bit far. Don't let that distract you from that part. What I just said there, like, don't do that, maybe. But like, there is a middle ground here. It was a
closer game, and that happened in a close game. One, I don't think he would have done it, but I mean, they probably would have called it technical. But I think since it was like a minute left in a 15-point game, the refs were like, "Hey, just like get off the court." But
I know we're already past this, but this was something that I noticed when watching the women's game, and I don't know if the men's game was like this. You guys will have to tell me. But watching at least the first quarter of the women's game, I was I'm for those that are just watching on the audio, I'm talking like a very minimal amount. I was very, very much convinced that we were watching like women play football with an orange round ball. Because there were so many parts from like, that's a foul, never called. And I'm like, I get wanting to watch them play, but there were times where like all these ladies are just dropping their shoulder. And I'm like, we're 2 steps away from a cat fight. And I'm here for it. It was exciting. But I don't know if the men's was the same way. And I feel like as the tournament goes on for both men and women's, you're like, let them play unless it's egregious. But there was some in the women's game. Very much what was like, that's foul.
Right. I think last night, considering how all of Purdue's games, even in the Big Ten tournament up until last night, they were very whistle heavy with like any contact against Edie. And I think last night, the refs do like Klingon versus Edie. There's going to be a lot of pump, push, shove, all of that. And there wasn't as many. Like, anytime those two were in the post together, I don't think there were as many calls, if any at all, against one another when they were both going up against each other one-on-one. So I'm happy from that sense that they just let Edie and Klingon play, just go head-to-head, because, like, that's the matchup I wanted to see, too, was, like, how did these two bigs go against each other? And Edie got his bag, but, the thing that failed Purdue was, like, once Edie was either off the court or the offense didn't go through him, there wasn't much left for Purdue to pick up. And UConn picked up on that real quick. They're like, you get the ball out of Edie's hands, like nobody else on Purdue besides Brandon Smith, who had a couple good runs, but nobody else on Purdue really picked up the slack when Edie wasn't scoring.
Which was kind of also the issue that, like, when they played Nebraska, that was kind of like when we went into the March Madness tournament too, though. Like, I had said that, like, I think Purdue is going to be the weakest, and they made it to the championship game. So obviously, I think they're going to be one of the weakest. Like, clearly, I didn't know what I was talking about, but you could see the differences. And I did finally watch some highlights. I guess I should have specified that, but it's like you could just tell that, like, UConn outclassed Purdue, and that's not me trying to badmouth Purdue. Just UConn was like they have a full system that works, and then Purdue, their system worked around Edie, which. Both of those are good options that can work in basketball, but you have to know how to operate when you don't have your main offensive operator. And Purdue just wasn't quite on that level. Again, not a bad thing. I mean, they made it. That's good for the Big Ten in a way. But, UConn outclassed them. And
they were just so much more dominant. And they were my pick at the beginning to win it all. And I mean, just every game. I mean, you look at the final scores of all those games, you're like, were any of these close? Or like, in theory, for the first half, and then the second half, they just blew everybody out of the water. So I think, was it that Illinois game that they went on that 30-0 run? Or Tennessee, one of the two. But, like, insane to go on a 32-0 run in basketball.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, it is. So, I think it was the Illinois game. Don't feel bad for them. In the slightest. I'm glad it happened to Illinois, but because I don't have that much to stand against Purdue. I mean, you can hate Edie all you want, but like
that's not true, Andy.
School, I don't really care for Purdue.
They have Purdue Pete. That's everything.
That's just a nightmare fool. That's totally separate from this.
You can still stand. You can still stand against Purdue for Purdue Pete. They made the decision to trot him out on the field or on the court. So
and to keep the mascot head the same. You're right.
Yes. Yeah. You want to give little kids nightmares because that's how you do it.
And
Good
they're
job,
still
Purdue.
doing it. But Nate, yeah, if you have any thoughts before we kind of wrap up just March Madness as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's I like to refer to UConn as just playing grown folk basketball.
They did.
Like this, and honestly, this game is pretty reminiscent of the Iowa South Carolina game where it was close for the half, and I mean, Purdue has Zach Edey, who arguably best player in college basketball this year, put up 37 and 10 in a college national championship game. Like that's nothing to really turn your nose up at, but just ran into a better team, like collectively, and that's tough to overcome. Like you said, Andy, UConn is just very, very consistent, deliberate in what they are doing, what they want to do, and they just wear you down over time. And it's not the flashiest basketball, but it's ethical hoops.
Sometimes
it wins you games,
stupid, man.
Yep. And Dan Hurley knows what he's doing, knows how to motivate his guys, and yeah, they were dominant. I mean, you don't win back-to-back championships without, at least being somewhat decent of a coach. So UConn, and I think everyone had at least a feeling going into the tournament that this was pretty much going to be UConn's tournament to lose, but to just not even really be challenged the entire way was pretty impressive to see. And I mean, they weren't playing pushover teams by any means, especially their last few with San Diego State, Illinois, Alabama, Purdue. That's not exactly what I would call an easy road, and they made it look just effortless.
Because what this March Madness was, besides the NC State's run was incredible because they were not getting in the tournament unless they won the ACC,
and it took a buzzer beater in the semifinals to get them to that.
To get there, they won that, and then they make it all the way to the Final Four. Which those are the type of Cinderella's like team stories that we love. And DJ Burns, loved watching every second of him. He was incredible to watch because he was essentially like a lineman playing center and just making it look so athletically easy. He was nimble. He could move and spin around the post, and I'm like,
I've never seen a more football-looking football player playing basketball as good as he did. I was like, holy cow!
Because I think you had your first two rounds of like just pure chaos and magic, and then you get to the Sweet 16, and this year's March Madness compared to like last year, everything like that. I think once you got to like the Sweet 16, you had your chalk teams besides NC State. And, that's kind of what I expected too. Is like, yeah, we'll get some upsets here and there. But like by the time you get to like the Sweet 16 Elite 8, you're going to have your chalk teams that are supposed to be there. And they were. But, like the Jack Golke run on 2 games.
Speaking of which, for those that watch this on YouTube, this was made after we released our March Madness episode, our pre-March Madness episode.
Yes.
I made a deal. Not necessarily a deal or a bet or anything. Just I was like, for any Cinderella teams that make it, past the first, like the ones that definitely shouldn't have made it, past the first 64 or whatever. I was like, I'm going to buy a T-shirt for that team, and I ended up. I haven't bought them all yet, but I got NC State since they made the Final Four. I was hoping to have that shirt today, and it didn't happen. But then I got Duquesne, Oakland, JMU, and Grand Canyon. I'm going to buy those 4. So. Apparently, I just need to start saying, "Hey, for the March Madness tournament, I'm just going to buy shirts for the teams that are not supposed to get past the first round, and we get some upsets." So you'll see those if you watch us on YouTube. You'll see me wearing those when I finally get them. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I mean the Jack Golke run, essentially got John Calipari to leave Kentucky. Yep. If you really want to spin zone it that way, it happened. But you had James Madison knock you off Wisconsin, Grand Canyon, winning the games that they did win. Don't know how, but those were fun games. But yeah, I mean it's kind of what I wanted and kind of expected out of this year's March Madness was your first 2 rounds were going to be your chaos upsets, but then by the time you get later, you're going to like, yeah, these are the teams that are supposed to be here, and rightfully so. I mean, even we didn't have as much like buzzer beater, amazing finishes, but you had the dominant teams, just win the games that they were supposed to, and it's definitely not like going to be one of the most memorable March Madness that I refer back to. I mean, I probably will just because from the Nebraska aspect that, it's, and we'll kind of transition to that part next of kind of wrapping up Nebraska's aspect of the season. But, it's not the most memorable in terms of like buzzer beater, great games and everything, but, still a fairly good March Madness, in my opinion, all things considered. And especially since, like I said, Nebraska made it for the first time in 10 years. So that's, despite them losing to Texas A&M, which, Wade Taylor went off against Houston. So I'm not as mad that Texas A&M played Houston as close into overtime as they did, because that's like, okay, they probably were the worst 9th seed to draw in that sense for Nebraska. But, it sucks that Nebraska did lose, but, they got to the tournament. They had such a great season. I think, it sucked in the moment, but I mean, reflecting back on it, I mean, this is 100% going to be one of the better Nebraska ball seasons that I remember for quite some time, just because of where they were last year and then what happened all of this year in terms of, the upsets, the blowouts on the road that just made me so infuriated. But there's so many aspects to Nebraska that we'll talk about in a second, but before we do that, if you guys have any more thoughts of March Madness before we kind of dive into the Nebraska aspect of basketball.
I will just say that it is amazing to me that we started off with Virginia, Colorado State, and then ended with UConn Purdue. That was the same sport that they were playing. Just
that might be the most memorable thing about this is that people were making the argument that Virginia,
it should have gotten in.
Really? Virginia was definitely deserving of that getting in spot, the play in spot, and then you watch the game, you're like, no, they weren't. Like, what?
No.
But then you also you watch this is the NIT, but like Seton Hall
and
played
Indiana
State.
They
won. I think
both should have gotten in over
both of those
teams that we had to watch.
And you can make the argument like, oh, well, they wouldn't have made it past the first round. Great. It probably would have made more exciting basketball games, though,
Virginia,
had they gotten in.
State.
That Virginia game was pathetic.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
If you were like, I'm going to get into basketball starting with this game in March Madness, you would quit watching basketball immediately after watching that game. That was awful. I'll maintain that. I don't care if I get sniped out of oblivion next week.
No, that was a tough game to watch, but we finished up with UConn Purdue, so
it got better from there at least.
Steady progression upward.
And I still have to spend like $100 on T-shirts now too. So what a dumb decision. Not a dumb one, because the shirts that I found are actually great, cool. But and then if you're like, oh, I know who that team is, that's what's going to scare me. Is if I wear it somewhere in public and people are like, oh, I didn't know you went there. Yeah, so about that.
Yeah. And if they make it next year, you'll be primed and ready to go.
Absolutely.
Long-term investment.
Yeah, I hope. If nothing else, I guess I'll just wear them to bed.
Right.
Anyway, moving on to, I think you said Nebraska-specific stuff?
Yeah, just kind of, wrapping up the season since we never... Yeah, we're not going to talk about the game or the loss itself, but wrapping up just the season that it was and the overall aspect of, like I said, where Nebraska was coming out of last year. You get the transfers of Josiah and Bryce Williams and Rank coming in, and just the team that, early on, like I said, they had the road struggles, but then, the most memorable wins in most recent decade. Upsetting the number one team that got to the championship game this year. It wasn't really a blowout, but they had control pretty much against that game against Purdue, and then the 16-point comeback against Wisconsin at home as well. So those two memorable wins that I'm not going to forget for quite some time. And then the overall aspect of just the whole Keisei Tominaga experience that we're going to miss forever. And then his dominance in the 3-point contest over Jack Golke and then over, Boo Booey. And then they had to square off against the women's winner from Indiana. He won that too. So, this whole season can be just encapsulated by a lot of things. Most people are going to remember for just, Keisei's last year making it to the NCAA tournament. That was a fun one game in the Big Ten tournament where he went off, and that was a fun experience. But a lot of fun and good from the season. I think a lot to look forward to in the future, and it's kind of where we're going to go with just a lot of departures on the roster. Some not surprising, some that were kind of surprising. Blaze Keita, Eli Rice. Eli Rice was a little bit that I was surprised by because he did play sometime this year, and I thought, if we could develop him, he'll be good. But Ramel Lloyd, and then you get CJ Wiltshire and Jamarcus Lawrence also going into the portal. So it's like, you have all these guys, and you have Keisei and Josiah that can't come back. Boogie Coleman can't come back because they all graduated seniors, done with their eligibility, all that so forth. And then you get the little bit of hope that Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary announced that they're going to run it back. So huge 2 additions there. And then you get Andrew Morgan, I believe, from North Dakota State, a forward, to kind of, hopefully either, fill the void that Josiah leaving did, whether Fred decides to play him, assuming Rank comes back. If you play him against or along Rank, kind of as a 2 big duo, or, if you start Rank and then you kind of interchange both of them. So you kind of have another big backup when one goes off the court, so on and so forth. And that was kind of the issue this year, but, with rebounding is, once Rank, Rank wasn't a great rebounder, but, once Rank was off the floor, you kind of lost your big middle presence in the center. So it's, you're relying on Josiah Alec. Well, he's not tall. He's just physical and scrappy. So I think it's a good transfer commit for Fred right now. We're probably going to get more in the next weeks, months, however long the portal stays open in college basketball. That part I'm not really familiar with either. But
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just hit the market.
Or that too. From Indiana State. I think for sure you got to get a point guard, and I have no idea if the Aaron Ulis. I have no idea what his status is. He's the Iowa guy that they got last year, but then the whole gambling thing came out from the Iowa team that kind of kept him out. He was always on the injury report as out when he wasn't really hurt. I think it was just Nebraska self-imposing like the penalty that he's not playing, disciplining, so on and so forth. So remains to be seen what news is going to come out of him, either from the NCAA or from the team. Because he was kind of supposed to be the point guard last year, but overall, I think Fred's first replacement has got to be, you got to find a point guard, because now that Jamarcus Lawrence left, it's really Bryce Williams right now, and he's not really a true point guard.
Point guard Sam.
Or point guard Sam or point guard Rank. And then, it might be nearly impossible to try to replace the shooting nature and style of Keisei, but, you find a decent shooter out of the portal too. I mean, that's also going to be good. But I think if you're trying to replace 1-for-1 with Keisei, it's, you're not going to find somebody like that. But that's kind of a fun season. A lot to look forward to. A lot to see what Fred does with kind of trying to get some additions. I don't remember the freshman's name, but you got a couple freshman recruit coming in as well. But interested to see what he does with portal commits. Trying to build that roster for next year. Like I said, having Bryce and Juwan come back is going to be huge. Don't really know about Rank yet, but I assume he's going to come back for another year. I hope he does, at least. Unless he decides to go pro in Europe, because I don't think he's going to the NBA, but that would be me. But yeah, it was a fun season. A lot to remember. A lot of firsts in quite some time for Nebraska, like I said, with the upsets making the NCAA tournament again. A lot to build on for next year. So, yeah.
Foundational is the word I was going to use. I was going to say, I don't have much more to build upon that, but...
And I mean,
Fred, I think, found his year.
Oh yeah.
That it took a while to get here, but I think he
Mhm.
finally found hey, this is the foundation that we build upon,
Mhm.
which is not a bad one to build upon.
And I know I've mentioned it before this year. Is you go back to last season too, with you had your building blocks with Derek Walker and Sam Greasel, that stuck around, hung with the program. Kind of helped lead Nebraska on that defensive turn they made halfway through the season, and kind of got them to the 500 points. Where there's some hope for the future. They didn't make a postseason, but the way they ended last year, going into this season, was just that hope for the foundation to be built, and certainly showed itself this year. So hopefully, Fred's starting to figure it out, starting to figure out how he wants to build his team going forward. And, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the portal commits, just kind of, who they get to commit, how Fred is trying to shape the roster and how he wants to go mentality wise forward. But fun season nonetheless, and can't wait for next year now that there's hope with Nebraska ball.
That's the great thing Nebraska's good at, is that hope thing, though. We know how that goes.
Hey, we have the best quarterback in the nation right now.
Before we go
in the nation.
That's right. I was gonna say I'll pass it to Nate before I bring up the last point. I know we hit upon what my last point is, but I don't want to cut him off either. So, do you have anything else, Nate?
Not too much. Just it was frustrating at times, but it was an exciting season, and first time that they made the tournament since I was in high school, and that's
it's been a while.
I don't like to think about that, but
thanks for making me feel old, Nate. I was in college, so neat.
Yeah, but it's a building block, and hopefully they can go forward. Like Andy said, we'll see what transfer portal brings. We got I think we got a 4-star coming from Wisconsin and a 3-star in Lincoln Southwest. Aside from that, we'll just see who we can get coming in.
I think we're going to hit pretty good on the portal. I'm not going to say that we're going to answer all of our questions in the portal or recruits. Next year still might be one of those years where it's like, we think we got the answers, but we're not totally sure until they get that chemistry going.
Right.
I mean, it was kind of a slow start this year first, not nearly as slow as recent years, but it took a little bit. It takes a little bit to get your team going. But the other news, and I know we already touched on it a little bit, but we didn't really expand on it, is Calipari going to Arkansas.
Oh yeah,
that
was really more. Yeah, that was a shock, to say the least, because I know their AD came out a couple weeks ago after they lost to Jack Olkey, and said that Calipari and I have always have an end of the year meeting discussion about kind of where they want to go with the program, future, so on and so forth. And talks went great. He's got a vision of where he wants to go for the future and everything. Everything's fine in Kentucky land. And then you get the news yesterday or 2 days ago that he's discussing with Arkansas and he's finalized the deal with Arkansas. And you're like, excuse me?
He's got a vision of where he wants to go, and what he meant by that was Arkansas. Not Kentucky.
So, that truly out of left field, because Calipari is no scrub in terms of being a coach. And
that shocked me so much, because I remember not even just that long ago, Kentucky was good. They lost this year in embarrassing fashion, but to call that to be, I shouldn't even say embarrassing fashion. It's just they just lost to a team they shouldn't have. But they're not the only ones. So it's if you're going to hold that standard, you might as well hold it to everybody else. So it can't, in my head, it can't just be that. But there is something to be said for, maybe it's grass is greener on the other side kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure if he wasn't, he left on his own, he didn't get fired, but I'm sure there were, especially how his recent performances in the tournament have gone, I'm sure there would have been a lot of rumblings in Kentucky land that were all right, we get to the tournament, but we either go 1 and done or 2 and done, being a top 5 seed, this shouldn't keep happening, and he has I don't know his farthest that he's gone since they won the championship back in 2012, but you always think of Kentucky as that blue blood program in basketball, and they just haven't been there recently, despite Calipari still being a really good coach. So Yeah, interested to see that, going to another SEC school instead of a different conference, which again, I
That
don't
always
know.
worked out great.
Yeah, I don't know why coaches do that. Like you would go to a different school within the same conference. Yes, Zach, I know it's money, but it feels weird to me.
You know what though? I still think though. I don't think it was money. I mean, I have no idea. It could be, but my theory is that he went because he felt like he needed to change a heart at Kentucky. He felt like he had run his
Billy
course
Clinton
there.
told him to.
Maybe, but then like on the flip side, like maybe he knows the SEC. So I could kind of see the logic where it's like I know how to coach in this conference. And so it's not going to be a total shift and not going to be a total. I mean, Arkansas is not even that far away from Kentucky in terms of geographically. It's a ways, but not like across the country. So he doesn't really have to change a whole lot of his strategy if we're talking recruiting. Well, maybe a little bit, but not like crazy amounts.
Right.
In my head, I'm sitting here thinking like, maybe he looked at the Oakland loss as like, I can't do anymore. I've done what I can, kind of like when you get to a job and you're like, if I keep doing this, it's going to destroy me earlier than it should. And so you just kind of bow out where you think you've done what you can. That's how I took it. Then the other thing is maybe they were just like, hey, we'll pay you $3 million more a year. And he's like, okay, sounds good.
Money talks.
Has anybody been announced for the replacement for Kentucky?
I just saw On 3 said they're targeting the Baylor coach, but that's
nothing official yet.
No.
I mean, I guess On 3 is official, but nothing's been announced yet.
So. Nor has Kentucky or Arkansas actually officially said anything either. So, yeah.
Maybe we're all just being strung along here then.
Really, the only thing we have are just the Arkansas local reporters saying that there's smoke here, but like Kentucky has not said that Calipari's left. Arkansas has not announced them as their coach. Like nobody has said anything official other than just the local reporter saying there's smoke here, and that's it. So it's not as of right now. It's not actually official that Calipari is the Arkansas coach yet. It's just all reports that he's agreed to a deal.
That's even weirder then. This whole thing has just completely gotten off the rails at this point.
Yeah, so I don't actually know. And
I mean, ESPN did run with it though too.
Yeah, and he did tweet out a video today saying like he basically was like a 3-minute long goodbye video to Kentucky, but it's still like nothing is actually official. Like in the video, he never said
he was walking his dog.
No, that was a different one. That was like 2 days ago when people asked him about it.
That was hilarious.
But yeah, it's like even in the video, he never said that like he accepted the job. It was basically like a goodbye to Kentucky, and that was it. So
maybe he's just on his retirement walkout.
I'm sure something will be official, but like as of right now, no one has said like yes, he's our coach, or no, he's not our coach anymore type thing. It's just
they probably don't even know.
No.
They all woke up. Arkansas players like, wait, what? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, that's unless we have anything else about Orange Ball. That's the end of college Orange Ball, I think. Going forward
until the fall.
Until the fall. I mean, I'm sure we'll have like little bits and pieces updates, like the Calipari thing, or if Nebraska gets some big portal hits or anything like that, we'll mention it. But in terms of in-length discussions, I think we're pretty much over for the season.
And what a season it was.
Also,
never mind.
I was just looking through it. No, I was just looking through the the games again. I remembered how Samford got screwed.
That's right.
Kansas.
Yeah, I just remembered that. I don't believe you anymore, Zach. Refs are terrible people.
Yeah, that was a clean block.
Hey. What I said was that they're not always right. And in that case, they were not right. That was a clean block.
Did I want that game to end because it was like 11:45 p.m. Central Time and on a Thursday and I had to work the next day? Yes. But I stayed up for it.
Didn't want
That
to
one
end
you had
that
to,
way.
though. You had to stay up. That was similar to the JMU game where
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like you watch it because it's like Wisconsin has not seemed like they can absolutely outclass this team. And then they didn't.
Thankfully,
It
that
was
was
like-
on a Friday, though.
Samford, well,
Game
yeah,
was a
but
Thursday. I'm like, I still got to work.
like Samford
Just
definitely like that's what sucks though, is that like calls that the refs make aren't reviewable outside of I guess outside of like what, goaltending maybe.
Yeah.
But like, you can't challenge, and that
Not
was
like
the
the
worst
NBA.
part.
Yeah.
That was the worst part.
Speaking of the NBA, transition.
Segues are cool.
Segues are cool. I don't have much other than the Bulls are pretty much locked into the 9-10 seed, depending on how they finish the season. So they'll get into the playoffs. It's just whether they get the home court advantage being the 9 seed or if they keep losing and get the 10th seed. But they are mathematically in the playoffs. But the story, I don't remember this guy's name, the gambling scandal story that came out. I don't remember.
John T. Porter.
Yes. John. Oh, my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
This
Michael
story-
Porter Jr.'s brother.
Dude, if you don't know the story, extremely funny. First off, guy's a bench player, doesn't play a whole lot of minutes. Purposely started making bets on himself on prop bets for his minutes played, which was like a 3.5, 4 minutes a game. He bet the under on all those games, and then when he got in, figured out a way to like get himself out of the game with like an injury or something like that, so that the under hit for minutes played.
I believe we call that
Incredible story.
I believe we call that a crude form of insider trading,
And
or
so-
at least not real kosher.
Carefully,
Gambling people
he's a
don't like
hero.
literally
That's so
betting
funny,
on
though.
himself.
Yeah, but in the worst way.
In the
Like
worst
he's
way.
he's betting on himself to be like, oh, I'm not going to play. And so like, at least with like other players that do this, like, oh, I'm going to bet that our team wins the game or that I get 3 touchdowns a game or whatever. They go whole hog, like they motivate themselves. Not this guy.
Oh, that was so
I love that.
it was insanely funny because I'm like, dude played the system and won. Like, what do you want from him?
Did he win though? He won for a little bit.
He did win until the NBA was like, this is suspicious because it's not
Suspicious.
because it's
Who would be betting on John T. Porter?
and
Who's
that's
making
what
these
raised-
bets?
and that is what raised the red flags with these sports books. Is like there's an insane amount of money on this prop bet for a guy that doesn't really play a whole lot. We should probably look into it.
What a
Like
dingus.
last year
You
when
bet
we
like $100. You make it the small bet. You don't put like 10 grand on it, you doofus.
like last year during it was the college baseball, like the Alabama coach that purposely put money on the LSU team because he had insider knowledge of his starting pitcher being out, so that he told another guy to go place like $150,000 bet on LSU when the limit was like 10,000. And that sportsbook was like, this is a little red flag. Who's betting 150 grand on a college baseball game?
See, at least at that point, though, they'd be like, this is odd. But it took them a little bit for this other one to be like,
Yes.
something's not lining up here.
It was, yeah. That's like my favorite NBA story that's happened in the past couple of weeks. It's just so funny.
Well, Nate's got the best team in the NBA on the Western Conference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my moment here and then I'll give the rest to him. Because I just looked up the standings. I've been terrible at following the NBA outside of just statistics and looking
Zach,
at
your
ESPN.
team beat his team.
I did see that. I was driving that day. I would like to point out it's safe driving before sports watching. Thank you.
I'd also like to point out that the Bulls swept the Timberwolves this year.
But something with that though
You're
is
welcome.
that I noticed the Suns are right now 6th in the Western Conference, and we're like right at the tail end of the season. It's
no
not a for sure
in
that they-
game, Zach.
Well, it's not a for sure they stay there because the Pelicans and the Kings are right behind them. So I mean, it could
And the Lakers.
flip flop.
Light the beam.
The Lakers. Oh yeah.
There's a game and a
Are.
half between the 6th through 9 seed.
So I mean, it's right there. So it's gonna come down to the wire. If I had to guess, I mean, either the Suns are gonna catch fire, or they're going to probably drop at least one game between the Clippers because they play them. I don't know if it's back to back, but they play them subsequently, and then they have 2 games between. One's the Kings, and then one is I think the Wolves.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Last game of the season,
admittedly,
I think.
yeah. So I'm guessing they'll drop at least at worst 2. I think they'll win 2 and drop 2. I'm guessing they probably won't stay unless everybody else just drops all their games. I don't think they're going to stay at the 6th seed, but it's good that they're right there on the cusp. My concern with the Suns team, as I'm looking just at stats and points and whatnot, is that they don't really have, I think, enough to make the finals unless they go on a tear, which would be the time to do it. I mean, the finals is the time to do it. Not the finals, sorry. The playoffs are the time to do it. But yeah, I'm not convinced that they're going to do it. But if they make the playoffs, great. I mean, they'll at least make the play-in, but that doesn't count to me. So I'll give it to Nate with the best team in the Western Conference.
Yeah,
Nate.
I mean, in your defense, there is a scenario where Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal just kind of hit shots, and then people are like, "Oh wow!"
I don't think it's the offense that's the concern with the Suns. I think it's the defense. I think it's not that Kevin Durant can't play. I don't think Kevin Durant at all is a problem in this scenario, or Devin Booker. The problem is in the NBA, you can't have just 2 people. You can, but you have to have good role players in the other 3 positions. And right now we have one other good role player with Bradley Beal, and then the bench. And it's that's probably not enough. I mean, we thought, I know
got Isaiah Thomas now.
That's true. Maybe that's a difference maker. I don't know. He seems old. But I don't know. I think there could be something there. I think it could be very much. I don't know if it'll be quite like the 2021 run they made, which was straight up magic, I thought. I remember when they did the alley-oop play from out of bounds. I think it was against the Clippers. At that point, when I saw that happen, I was like, they're going to the finals. So I think that was the last game. And they still had to go and win the next game before that, I believe. And at that point, I was like, no, they're going to the finals. They got it. I was convinced. And then they did, and then they lost. So, but at least I got to see a Suns finals matchup in my lifetime. That was cool.
Yeah. Nate got to experience the Alex Steph Curry Caruso game.
Yeah, that was shout out to Alex for
career high 7
going absolutely unconscious.
I mean, that's flat jab at Nate. I obviously enjoyed it, but
well, the thing is, I can't be mad at it because his reasoning was because the DJ played Sandstorm in pregame, and that's bringing it on yourself.
The game, and he's like, yeah, I was just out here. I was just really feeling it because this DJ in pregame war was just playing some bangers, and so I just went off, and it's like.
Freaking isn't Sandstorm coming up on
Sandstorm
20 years old though too? It's crazy that this song has such the staying power with how annoying it is. Hot take, I know, but it's just ridiculous that it's this monumental thing now.
So yeah, I forgot that was his reasoning for it too.
Yeah, so I can't get too upset about that. But...
I mean, he makes some good points.
Yeah, I would also
hold on, let him cook.
But no, the Timberwolves are currently down 44-26 to the Wizards at home, so that's good.
What?
But
it's a good thing the Wizards are good this year,
right? Definitely not a lottery team that has more
or it's been eliminated.
20 wins, right?
Definitely not.
Right?
We're not doing that revisionist history thing right now.
But for the next at least hour or so, the Timberwolves are currently in first place in the West with the tiebreaker over the Nuggets, sitting at 54-24, and they are guaranteed a top 3 seed at this point in the West, which is crazy. Never thought I'd see the day, but we finally made it out of the play-in tournament and are doing pretty all right for ourselves. And they just announced today that Karl Anthony Towns was cleared for 5-on-5 activity and is gearing up. Hopefully, it sounds like they're going to try and get him playing probably by a Sunday, so maybe that matchup against you, Zach. But ideally, they can get one game under his belt before we hit playoffs.
He's cleared for 5-on-5 activity. Did you guys know that basketball is a 5-on-5 activity? That means he can play.
A weird coincidence.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely
It's like
crazy.
they knew what they were doing. Good for them. That just means that the Suns will lose in spectacular fashion. Or there's two ways it's going to go, Nate. You know this is true. It's either the Suns are going to lose in spectacular fashion or the Timberwolves are going to be like, you know what, we got this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden lose by like 40 and you're like, oh, what the hell happened? But then it's going to come out. They're like, oh, we were just resting up for the playoffs and they're going to go on a tear. So
I hope so.
That's that's where my money's at.
It'll be interesting. I mean, you can be as good as you want to be in the regular season, but the playoffs are a different beast. Like, you can set yourself up for so much success, but there guys just hit that extra gear in the playoffs. I mean, it's an adjustment, and they're not going to be playing regardless of who makes the play-in and who's what seed, regardless of what seed the Timberwolves end up getting. The West is tough. You're going to be facing the good team, regardless of kind of who makes it through. And it's going to be a battle throughout all the playoffs, I think. So hopefully we have some good basketball to watch coming up. And
admittedly, I think the Western Conference is going to be the exciting one to watch. Not that the East won't be, but I think the East
be the Celtics and whoever wants to beat the Celtics.
Yeah, not to like crap on the Bulls. I mean, the Bulls could make a magical run, but I think
right there, buddy.
I think you look at the top two teams in the East, and it's like, well, it's going to be one of those two, probably the Celtics.
It's the It's whoever can beat the Celtics is what it is.
Yeah, but the thing is, and that's the best part about basketball is that they have to beat them 4 times. So, like, yeah, there can be a team that can beat the Celtics once, maybe twice, maybe even 3. But if they, that fourth time is where it becomes hinky because it's like, I don't think there's anybody that can do it. At least with the West, it seems this year that outside of, I don't think it's been, I think it's a pretty clear indication that the West is very strong. And it's just, it's not I do think that the top 3, the Wolves, the Nuggets, and then
Thunder.
The Thunder. Yeah. I think those 3 will make good runs. I don't foresee the Suns going very far. Maybe second round if they get past the play-in. That's the thing.
But I mean,
if they get past the play-in.
yeah. I mean, the Timberwolves, Nuggets, Thunder, like have a good shot, but I mean, you can't rule out Paul George and James Harden. You can't rule out
That's
Luka.
a good point.
You can't rule out Kevin Durant. Can't really rule out LeBron. Don't really feel comfortable ruling out Steph Curry either. So it's like.
That's still wild to me that
speaking of the Thunder, do you guys just as annoyed at that March Madness commercial with Giddy and Shea and Jet? Like, I got super annoying because it played every other commercial, and I'm like, all right, I know who you two are. Can you please just stop telling me what a pro wants?
That is the worst part about just like streaming sports on TV though, because like YouTube TV only has like, I swear to Christ, it's because this is the same thing like that. Ads. You guys remember like I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when it was the SoFi commercial and it was just use SoFi to refinance your loans, and it's like I get it, and then it would play in the same block. So if it was like 5 commercials, it'd play the first and the last. It's like I get it. SoFi is great. Still don't use them. And that's why, like, they're probably a good company and whatever. And so we're never going to get sponsored by them now because I'm about to say this, but I will never use them because I'm tired. I was tired of seeing their commercials.
Unless they sponsor us, then we'll consider.
Yeah, if they sponsor us,
balls in your court, SoFi.
Hey, SoFi, what's up?
But the East, I think, has some potential because like Embiid just came back a couple games ago, so the Sixers are currently a play-in team, but they're the 7th seed. They could jump out to that first round bye or whatever, and they could. I mean, Embiid's big guy, tough to stop. So, and then it'll be the one I'm really interested to see is Milwaukee, just with actually seeing Dame in the playoffs. They haven't been great lately, and it's still funny that Doc Rivers is their head coach. But
I know.
I'm excited to at least see
man, we know where
Dame
this
have a
is going.
chance.
We know where this is going. They're gonna make a decent run, and then all of a sudden they're not gonna get anywhere. Like, we know where this goes. We've seen it before. We've watched this movie before.
Yep. But yeah, I know the NBA season ends on Sunday, so, and I believe play-in is, I don't know exactly when the play-in starts. Sometime I think like
April 16th, I believe.
I was gonna say can't be much.
Yeah, that following Tuesday then.
Yeah, so. I believe based off the ads that I keep seeing from TNT, I think they do say April 16th is the play-in game start time.
So yeah, that'll be a quick turnaround. And it'll be interesting to see. If we got 3-4 games left for each team in the season, and interesting to see with just like we said, teams 6 through 9 in the West are
nice.
Separated by a game and a half. Seeing how all that shakes out, and even the East is
that is an obligated law.
Can't help it, I suppose. That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, hopefully we get some good hoops going. Teams should be trying to play some of their best basketball. Hopefully we see some good basketball coming. And hopefully the Timberwolves, my only hope for them is that they can win their first round matchup. That's been our issue for a little bit. So if we can get out of the first round, I'll be a happy camper.
That's fair. Well, do we want to transition over then to? There's not a whole lot here because I think Andy's really the one that keeps up the best with us out of the three of us with college baseball.
College baseball. Yeah. In terms of a national perspective, I mean, you could probably pretty much pick any powerhouse baseball team of recent in college baseball, and they're in the top 25 and they're doing well. Whether that's, any of the SEC teams at all, except LSU. They are not doing too hot this year, but, Vandy's there.
No more K-Burgers.
No. Vandy's there. A&M's there. And then the ACC side, you have Clemson, Florida State, Duke. They're all doing well and so on and so forth. But from a Nebraska perspective, they got ranked last week, 23rd. They lost the midseason game or midweek game to Creighton. And then they hosted Ohio State this past weekend, took the series 2-1 games over Ohio State. They sit at 22-7 and 5-1 in the conference, atop of the conference right now in Big Ten play. Brett Sears was named the pitcher of the week in the Big Ten last year, and then he got added to, I think, like the National Pitcher of the Year watch list today. Dude's been on fire. He's got like a 1.15 ERA, I think, right now. He's won every game. The game that I went to last Friday against Ohio State, he pitched a complete game, 10 strikeout game, only allowed 2 hits, which were kind of BS hits. Easily could have thrown a no-hitter if a swinging bunt and a blooper essentially are the 2 hits that Ohio State went. But he's definitely a player to watch kind of, for the starting rotation going forward. Right now they're down to Kansas 11-5. But the issue is that this is what they had issues with this last year is they would go and win like the weekend series or sweep the weekend series. But like the midweek games are usually the games that you throw your bullpen guys or like not your top guys. And that's kind of what bit Nebraska in the butt last year. And it's what's kind of butting him in the butt this year as well. Kansas is 15-14 right now, but it's, you can have the philosophy that you win you win the weekend series or like sweep the weekend series, but you lose the midweek games. Doesn't really hurt you that much. But it's not a strategy I want them to have going forward. But it's a fun, exciting team. They have the pitching and they have the bullpen depth in terms of weekend starters and weekend bullpen staff that can keep them in games. It's, can the offense kind of like right now, can they come back and win games? But it's so far so good for the Nebraska aspect of college baseball going forward. Having a ranked team to watch, even though they're 23rd, 24th right now, depending on which poll you want to look at. But
ranked is ranked, baby.
Ranked is ranked. Yeah, best team in the Big Ten. And so, like I said, they're down right now, but midweek games they're such a fluke. And, you look at, I think Clemson is the top college baseball team right now.
Arkansas,
yeah.
Clemson's number 2, though.
Yeah, Clemson was. I mean, they've lost 3 games, but I mean, Clemson a couple weeks ago lost the midweek game like 15-3 against a no-name team. So it's like these things happen to college baseball teams, no matter how high ranked you are. It's like you win the weekend series, but then you come play a midweek game and you just get your butt kicked by a no-name local team. So
the structure of your rotation.
Correct. And it's just how college baseball is right now. It's not like the MLB where you play every day or, have one rest day. I mean, you have your weekend games and then you have your one midweek game that you don't throw your starters for a midweek game just because you save those for the important games, which are usually your conference games at this point of the year. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be just kind of a small update every now and then until we kind of get to regionals in the College World Series. But,
when does that take place, by the way?
College World Series is usually the second week of June.
That's what I thought. I was like, we'll start seeing regionals.
It'll be... The College World Series is June 14th to the 24th. So kind of end of May, first week of June, you'll probably have your regionals and super regionals going forward, which, projected right now, Nebraska is projected to host a regional. That's assuming they kind of win their conference games, win the weekend series sweeps that they're supposed to, and probably do well in the Big Ten tournament. But, we'll see how it goes forward. If they keep this midweek games up going through the weekend, then no, it's not going to go well. But yeah, I mean, you want to win these midweek games, but you throw your bullpen guys. I mean, against Creighton, they only lost to Creighton 5-3, and Creighton's no slum either. I mean, they're 24-6 or 24-5 as well this season, so they're doing really well. But I mean, I think that pitcher, both teams used like 12 or 13 total combined pitchers. So it's like you just throw your bullpen guys during the midweek games. It's nothing to hang your hat about. But again, you want to win these games too. You don't want to lose every single one, especially since you play local close teams. Like, we're playing Kansas right now. And, I think they have another game against Wichita State and UNO and Creighton, and maybe Kansas State again. But these are the games that you just play local teams during the midweek and hope to win them, but I don't want them to lose all of them at the same time. But that's my college baseball segment. That's really about all you need to know.
I was gonna say, we were just talking before we started this, is like college baseball is not impossible to watch, but it's like I have like MLB TV, which segue. It's just it's not the easiest thing to watch, especially like I want to watch Nebraska games. I'm not paying for a Flow TV, Flow Sports, whatever it is. Like, sorry, it just I'm still trying to figure out baseball, and I figure MLB TV subscription is easier.
Yeah, and I mean that is, like we had mentioned earlier, that's the kind of the downfall of having multiple streaming avenues, is like you have more ways to watch, but like it's all these subscription-based services. Like they're playing on ESPN Plus right now, but that's because Kansas is the home team and the Big 12 is intertwined with ESPN, so that's how you watch that. But if you want to watch, the Nebraska games, they only have a handful of games that are on like the Nebraska media, local TV here, Flow Sports, Big 10 Plus, all of that. Like that's pretty much until you get to the regionals where everything's then on ESPN, so on and so forth. But I mean, I wouldn't say I watch college baseball outside of Nebraska until we get closer to regionals and College World Series. Then I start to watch probably more of the teams, just because then it gets exciting to see which teams are going to go to Omaha. But yeah, I get that point too. It's hard to watch unless you have a rooting interest for a team, which for me it's only Nebraska and college baseball or LSU. That's because their fans when they come up to Omaha are so fun to have around.
I will never forget the whatever bar it was that had like the shot,
the shot
counter,
yeah.
the Jello shot counter, and like LSU was up by
They
like
blew
3-fold.
that. Yeah, they blew that
It's
out
like-
of the water.
It's like okay.
They travel.
They do.
And
They do a
and
lot.
the latest projections, this past week for the regional, that if Nebraska did host was like us, Creighton, and LSU, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" If that actually
The entire
happened,
city of Omaha will go under.
yes. First off,
Like,
I mean, LSU would travel, so like a Nebraska home game would probably be like an LSU home game. But then, like you add, if Creighton got added to your regional, it's like, what? Why are you doing that? Why are you making it worse for us? But
is it worse or better?
well, better. Well,
And they'll just
if
throw
we
Texas
win-
A&M in there as well,
Yeah,
just
oh
for the
my
memes
God.
at that point.
wouldn't put it past the NCAA.
No, at this point.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
transition
then with
to
that, let's move on to
professional
professional.
stickball. Yeah, season got underway last week, 2 weeks ago. Was it
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
As of this recording, it's the 28th, so it was like
Yes.
almost 2 weeks ago. So
From an overview standpoint, I mean, kind of the surprise teams right now would be the Pirates for sure.
for sure.
Being 9-3.
Hot last
Yeah. What else? I mean, the Dodgers are good. They're gonna be good. Let's just accept that at that point it gets easier to go out through the season.
I think a surprising team to me, not that I thought they were going to be bad, but just that
The A's are better than the Marlins.
everybody's better than the Marlins right now. And
Yeah,
I need to
and that's saying
preface
something.
everything. I need to preface everything I'm about to say by, for those that remember when I said last week or the last episode, I have never really watched much baseball. I've watched it. I kind of got an idea. This year I've gone all in on it. So, I went and I become a stat whore and everything. So I'm all about this stuff now. But the team that has surprised me just watching a few games is Cleveland. And the Reds also look decent. They're not necessarily like barn beaters. Well, Cleveland might be. They're playing really well lately. Maybe not so much Cincinnati, but like I was just
sorry, Nate. Your
course-
division is a little trash.
It's actually not bad this year.
Yeah, it's competitive, which is good. But
we're also very early into this.
Yeah.
Season. You gotta let it cook a couple months. I feel like
well, the White
100
Sox,
some odd
the White
games.
Sox are already done. You can just eliminate them.
That's fair.
Are you sure?
Yeah, they're bad.
Yep.
Oakland
playing-
is better than them.
I mean, granted, Trevor Story's out now, but
leaving Oakland is better than them because their owner hates the A's.
You're going to Sacramento, though.
An owner that hates the city that they're in is leaving to go to a different city until their ballpark is built in Vegas.
hey,
I hear Sacramento's pretty baller, though.
Yeah, and then they're gonna
Maybe
leave
biased.
when Vegas opens their stadium in 2027
Well, you can't
They
make
finish the stadium.
if they
can't
finish their
fault-
stadium.
Yeah, you can't fault the owner for those mistakes. I mean, you can't fault the team.
I was gonna say you can blame the owner for
Sorry,
this one. It's
I got those mixed up. But you can't fault the team for the owner's mistakes.
No, which I mean, I do feel for A's fans because it's probably so disheartening to have your team that you probably grew up there, and then they just ultimately their owner says we're not going to invest in the stadium, we're not going to invest in the fans, we're just going to pick up and leave, and then go to a different stadium in 3 years. It's just like it sucks. I mean, I've not having pro teams here in Nebraska, I can't say I necessarily know what it's like to have a team leave. The closest regional wise would be the Rams moving from St. Louis back to LA. But it's probably got to suck as it's like, if you grew up an Oakland A's fan, which I apologize to you, they were good back in the day. If you ever watch Moneyball,
If you're an older A's fan, I was gonna say if you're an older A's fan, you're probably not too upset. But if you're a newer A's fan, it might be time to hop
Sucks.
the wagon.
right? There are plenty of other better baseball teams for you to cheer for. Just don't
Well,
pick the A's.
And so that's my path this year. Is I've landed on the Cardinals because it's my wife and my father-in-law's team, and they know the most about them. So that's a team that I can at least bank on right now. It's like, okay, I have somebody I can follow, but as I watch more, I'm trying to figure out who I like the best. But Cardinals so far haven't looked bad. I mean, they have not looked necessarily great. They're a scrappy team. They're fun to watch in certain cases. They put up a decent fight at the end of the game last night against the Phillies until they got to inning 10 and then decided we forgot how to do this thing. So it was a lot of fun from like inning 8, and then at the last inning at the first extra inning, then the Phillies come and they score 2 runs. It's like, well, never mind, that was quick. It was good. They're all right so far. So
yeah, the Twins are. I'm not going to make too many judgment decisions right now because
it is still early.
It's very early, and I mean, we played the Cleveland Guardians, who are admittedly hot right now, and we're currently in a series with the Dodgers. So it's like
you kind of got a rough schedule draw.
Yeah, we'll wait and see how we play against other.
Also,
teams that we actually match up against.
Somebody, or I think it was Andy that just said a little bit ago that the Marlins were not great. Let's not forget about the White Sox. They have not looked good either.
No, they're both bad.
And again, I'm saying all of this. I don't know baseball that well. I'm working through it, but man, I'm just watching some of these teams. I'm like, even I know that that's not great. So. But yeah, no, I've found that baseball is a lot of fun, so I'll be watching a lot of it, and it'll be a lot of fun to talk about it.
As long as Royce Lewis gets back, the Twins will have a chance, but he's out for at least a month, so me too.
Yeah, so that's kind of so one, I think, key story, and I know we all are kind of like on this one, but one of the cool stories I thought was, let's see, it was. 1, 2, 3. It was 4 days after opening day, and we already had a no-hitter game pitched, and it was Ronel Blanco for the Astros. I was like, that was quick, but really, I went back and read
he
about
plays
that.
for our cheaters.
Yeah, but no, like his whole story of like he wasn't even necessarily supposed to even play that day. I think he was like a reserve pitcher or something. I think he was a bullpen pitcher, and they were like, "Hey, we need you to start," because of reasons. And this is, I don't think, entirely correct, but I'm just kind of summarizing. He basically wasn't supposed to be playing the whole game. And then he goes and throws a no-hitter. And it's just like, even if you don't like the team, which again, the Astros are cheaters, but like, even if you don't like the
cheaters
team,
now.
that is a pretty cool story just in general, in my opinion. As much as I hate the Astros haven't looked necessarily great to start the season either. No. So maybe it's like,
if they're
maybe it's like
forever,
the karma
I'll be
wheel's
happy.
coming back. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think maybe the karma wheel will catch them.
It's kind of like the Yankees with me. If they're bad forever, I'll always be happy. Even though the Yankees are good this year because they have money to spend, and they do spend it, unlike my team, who doesn't spend money. Yeah.
So then, I don't know if this is necessarily. I think we'll call this a new segment, something that I don't know. We'll workshop it a little bit. But my father-in-law, who's a huge baseball fan, I've asked him to just send me some notes on things that he'd like us to touch upon because he's an avid listener of the Sports Ballers here. So we're going to introduce a segment here called Terry's Takes. Tentatively, this may not stay, but I think Terry's Takes is good. And so this one I think is more of just like a discussion point for us since we're in the start of the baseball season. But the hot topic this week for a lot of people is pitchers going down like flies. And so a lot of people are trying to figure out like, well, what's the blame? And a lot of people are like, oh, it's the pitch clock, because of course it is. There are people that didn't like the pitch clock being introduced, and now we have to try to take it away. Some people are blaming that they can't sticky the ball. This part I don't know necessarily about. I guess that must be what the little bags on the mound are for or whatever. But like they can't sticky the ball like they used to, so they're blaming the slick grip on the ball. A lot of people, though, at this point are saying it's none of those things, that it's the velocity at which pitchers are throwing, which from long, long ago when I knew nothing about baseball, well, so, 2 weeks ago, but from a time ago when I heard about people, in different pitches and different strategies you did against hitters, now it just seems like they're throwing it as fast as they can. So to me, knowing nothing really about pitching or strategies, I've been kind of picking up on that is like, it doesn't seem like they're really trying to go out of their way to throw to different They are kind of, but they're just trying to throw as fast as they can to those parts. And it's like, that's got to be hard on the arm. So I don't know. That to me seems like the culprit, but I was curious if you guys had any extra thoughts on that.
Well, I agree, since one of my starting pitchers is now on that IL list. Nick Pivetta got put on the 15-day IL list because of a strained flexor, whatever you want to call it, in his pitching arm. So affected my team too. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are, or at least a lot of the players are trying to claim that the pitch clock is kind of affecting they're having to speed up the game, and it's supposedly affecting how fast pitchers have to pitch and so on and so forth. But I mean, I don't know if I really believe that, because it's how you throw the ball basically that's causing these injuries and everything. But I don't know, because I think these things just happen in baseball. I don't think it's necessarily like new rules that MLB is implementing or anything like that. I think it's just like it's how players are throwing the ball, how the game has evolved from, you need to be faster, you need to be throwing the ball so many different ways, you need to be, popping 95 plus each time you throw a fastball. And I mean that, over time, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't necessarily think the human body is built to do that forever.
Even 162 games.
Yeah, even 162 games. Obviously starting pitchers don't throw that. You only play so many games. But yeah, it's probably just a mix of everything. Is the human body's not meant to do that.
Yeah,
as a professional, which is why you don't see most baseball players make it to 40 before they retire. Just because baseball is just such a strain on your whole body in terms of depending on which position you play, but especially pitchers. I mean, if you don't have your throwing arm, I mean, it's like any other sport, your career's done. Which is why you see so many pitchers, with Tommy John surgery. If you try to come back, it's such a long process to try to come back.
Jimmy John surgery,
yes. Because you're essentially trying to do the same thing with, a new ligament, a new muscle in your body that you just tore, broke, repaired, all of that thing. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Players Association, or if anything comes out of it, or if the MLB even acknowledges that something is contributing to this at all. But I think it's just the way the game is right now, is where you have to throw harder, you have to be more decisive with your pitches, you have to throw it a certain way to get your pitches to do what they want to do. And I think that's just, it all comes down to just how the game has evolved. Is pitching has to be more top notch, has to be better, because hitting and offense is getting better and better, with players being, in a sense, more yoked. Outside the steroid era of baseball, which was a very fun era. If you ever want to go back and watch McGuire and Sosa and Bonds just absolutely jack bombs. But it's the way the game is going right now, and the way the game is evolving. Players just being a certain different type of athlete that you have to play baseball now.
And as somebody that's just coming into the game, trying to take it a little more serious, the pitch clock, if that is somehow the blame, and they're like, oh, we need to take that away, that's going to just kill my interest, because I've enjoyed watching games because they still move. It's still fun to watch, but it's not sitting there waiting 3.5 hours for the game to finally get through. Which I saw, I think, something the other day that they've shaved off anywhere between, depending on the game and how it goes, they've shaved off 30 to 45 minutes of game. Yep. That's crazy. Imagine doing that in football. That'd be basically, it would feel like an entire quarter is gone if you did that in football. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, but again, I have no idea.
Right?
Do you have any talks or any thoughts?
As we get deeper into the summer, I'll have more more musings on MLB. I'm just starting to delve back into the
It's
fantasy baseball Reddit subreddit.
Ah,
So
fair enough.
I'm just kind of dipping my toes right now, but the consensus from there seems to be that it's more a velocity thing than like a pitch clock or a ball issue. I'm sure to a certain extent pitch clock has maybe exacerbated the issue, but I mean, you're in an unnatural motion hurling something as fast as you can isn't going to be super
It is crazy to
sustainable,
think.
so.
It is crazy to think about, though, this tiny ball moving at 95 plus miles an hour. And that's fairly consistently. Like you watch, as I've just been watching some of these games, like the ones that people can hit pretty consistently, even if it's fouled, like the ones that batters have taken to swing on every time is the weird sinkers or like the curveballs that go like 78. And they're hitting them consistently. And so like you said, Andy, like the game seems to be conditioned at this point to it's throw it as fast as you can. And it seems like location within the strike zone isn't as important as it is getting it to the glove. And then
unless you have Angel
catcher's
Hernandez
framing.
as the umpire, then anything's a strike.
Well, that's different. That's a different argument.
He was the ump for the Twins against the Guardians a couple games back. And
was it that game that it was such an atrocious?
He had 10 missed calls, and 9 of them were against the Twins.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's such an atrocious umpire.
So
it's very funny. Every time I see a clip, I'm like, all right, what was a strike that wasn't a strike to him this time?
I'm probably going to get this joke slightly wrong, but for everything out there that's like, this is why unions are good, then they just take a picture of Angel Hernandez and say, this is why unions don't work. And it's like, oh, man.
Nope.
Again, I have to keep saying this because I don't want somebody to come out and be like, oh, but you said this about your baseball, your baseball stuff. Hot take. I know nothing about baseball, but even I know Angel Hernandez is not necessarily great at his job. And at this point, I feel like he's just got to be trolling people, just like, I'm going to have fun with this. But then the thing is, like, when you can say like he immediately starts influencing games, not necessarily like he's betting on them, just influencing the outcome of them because of his calls. That seems like a problem. Just going to say that.
It would be a problem if it just recently happened, but it's been his entire umping career that this.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a good point.
It's
at this point, like, with the rise of sports betting in the last, we'll call it 5 years. I know it's been around for longer than that, but
right.
With how mainstream it's become and how easy it's become in the last 5 years, you could make the assumption if it was just recent, like, oh, he's in on this, kind of like the guy from the NBA from 2 decades ago at this point. But yeah, no, he's just been bad at it.
He's done it his whole career. So I think it's just a him thing.
So he's consistently bad, I guess.
Yes, he is consistently bad. But my final thought in terms of the Red Sox aspect, like I said, I already mentioned one of our pitchers going out, but then the other bad news is Trevor Story being done for the season really sucks because last year he played like 6 games and then he got a fractured wrist, then that kept him out the rest of the season. Finally gets healthy enough, rehab to get back into the starting lineup after the Red Sox sent him to a big contract. Because I mean, he's still a fairly large name, just not what he was when he was with the Rockies, I believe, is where he came from. But 6 games in again, goes for a diving ball on a hard hit ball, lands on his shoulder, and it just like. He immediately rolled over on his back, started kicking his legs, and couldn't move his arm. And you're like, he probably dislocated it, tore everything. And they confirmed today that he's gonna need season-ending surgery on his shoulder. So just sucks.
Tell him to stop getting hurt.
Yeah, I wish, man. I wish, but
make it that easy.
It all goes back to the Red Sox not trading away Xander Bogaerts, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be in this position. But now they're in this position to call up a minor league shortstop for probably the rest of the year, unless they do something at the trade deadline. Which, if they didn't do anything in the offseason, I imagine they aren't going to do anything now. But surprisingly, the Red Sox are 7-4 now. Granted, their 10-game West Coast trip was 2 of them were against the Angels and the Athletics, so kind of give me wins at that point. But it is what it is. They lost to the Orioles today, but that's, I'm enjoying the little bit of high right now that the Red Sox are semi-good because I don't know how long it's going to last. because
I don't know, man.
very long.
I think you might be. Granted, with Trevor's story going out, that's tough.
It's,
obviously,
sucks, but
I think you might be surprised. I don't think they're gonna be the worst team by any means.
I hope
at this point, I think we've got some stiff competition for the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah,
so
we do. Yeah, it would. Yeah, if they happen to do what the Marlins and White Sox are doing right now, that'll be absolutely devastatingly worse. But
well,
yeah,
before we move on to the next thing, want to throw it back to Terry. Thanks for texting me today, so we can start. I'm gonna do that every other week now. Get to some of his thoughts, and we can discuss them here. We might keep it as Terry's takes. I don't know. We'll talk more about it, but just a cool little fun fan thing. So for those that also want some fan stuff, like some fan interaction, just let us know. We'll throw some stuff in here. We're all about the people. So moving on though to probably a short segment, but a segment nonetheless, college hockey. So we were just discussing this before we started. I know Nate and I have only kept up very slightly. Nate probably more so than me, but
I have not.
We are this
out and didn't care anymore.
So Thursday we have 2 more games in the final 4 of the Frozen 4. My bad. Thursday's those last 2 games, and then the championship is this Saturday. So it should be, if you're a big college hockey fan, I'm becoming a hockey fan, but college is probably not my main watch at this point. I'll probably start with NHL, to be honest. Those 2 games are between Denver and Boston. Is it University?
Mm-hmm.
Just Boston U. Okay, and that's at 4:00 on Thursday, and then at 7:30, it's between Boston College and Michigan. So, if anything, if you're a Big Ten fan, it says here that Michigan won. Like this is from the NCAA.com site right here. Jeez, Nate, did you not keep up with this?
Yeah, Nate.
UND lost, and then
yeah. It says Michigan beat Michigan State.
Okay.
Michigan beat Michigan State 2-5 or 5-2. Sorry.
Okay.
So
ESPN had me straight. That's my bad.
Boston College and Michigan. So either that or the NCAA's got their site wrong, which that would be even funnier.
Right.
So yeah, I guess if you're a college hockey fan, Thursday is the day to watch. Thursday afternoon, I guess. And then, we'll have the championship of the Frozen 4 on Saturday as of this recording. So the 13th. College hockey's over. Another short one, I think, but NHL, we're getting down to the wire.
Also happening soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I started watching a couple games, but I know I'm going to really start to pay more attention come the Stanley Cup playoffs, but
so yeah, the teams that are locked into the playoffs right now are the Bruins, the Panthers, the Leafs, the Lightning, the Rangers, the Hurricanes, the Stars, the Avs, the Jets, and the Canucks and Oilers. I don't necessarily know how many more teams need to make it, but those are the ones right now that are locked into the Stanley Cup playoffs, at least.
So I'm looking at the clinching scenarios on ESPN right now, and there are so some of these are a little different. So the Nashville Predators, which is a team that I watched the other night, they're a lot of fun to watch. So they will clinch a playoff berth. Yep, 16 out of I think 32.
11. Yeah, 11 up clinched right now, so 5 more.
So the Nashville Predators can clinch a playoff spot, I think either tonight as of this recording or tomorrow. The Kings can clinch a playoff berth. The Rangers will clinch the Metropolitan Division. And then the Bruins can clinch the Atlantic Division, although that one has a little bit more. So the Maple Leafs have to lose to New Jersey in any fashion, and then the Panthers have to lose to the Ottawa Senators in regulation. So I didn't know this until I started reading about it today. There's a point system for how the game plays out. So if you beat a team in regulation, you get 2 points. And I think if you make it to overtime, then the team that loses in overtime gets a point for making it.
Mm-hmm.
The other team
you get a point.
So it's like a split point thing. It's a weird to me. It's a weird system, but
hockey is hockey.
Hockey's there's a lot of
all I'm gonna say.
Here we go.
The Minnesota Wild are still technically in the playoff race.
They are
I was going
technically
to say
still
they
in the
are
playoff
still in the
race.
playoff race. It's not
I'm looking
impossible.
at the ESPN numbers. They have a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. And they're
But they are
playing. They're
technically
playing
there.
some scrub team called the Avalanches tonight. So,
Oh,
Hey man, the Avalanche got railed against the Stars the other night, which
yeah.
so
that's
I watched
happened.
the Predators and the New Jersey Devils play, and I was like, okay, and like those two teams, at least in this game, I don't know if it's just how they normally play. So those of you NHL fans that listen to us, all like two of you probably that are like, no, this isn't how they play. That game, they were very much more. They were slower, more reserved. Kind of took some time to set up some of their shots and everything. It was very strategic in the way they did it. And then you got the Stars and the Avs, they were just like YOLO bombing everything. And you'd see freaking Avs and Stars players like they'd toss it back to the goalie, and then all of a sudden you'd see the opposing player come in just ready to rock their shit. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Like it was a tale of two games that I watched, and they were both incredible, completely different reasons. So
that be hockey.
Hockey's going to be fun come playoff time,
Oh,
which
yeah.
for those that are interested that, may not know, that starts next Saturday, the 20th of April. So national holiday this summer here too. So, yeah, I mean, hockey, we unfortunately, I don't want to necessarily speak for you guys, but I don't think we've kept up with it. I know I'm going to start watching it a lot more come playoff time, just because it's going to be easier, because it's going to be a lot more accessible to find at that point, I think. So
breaking baseball news: Jackson Holiday just got called up by the Orioles.
Ooh. Damn it! That's who Boston plays this week. Tomorrow, actually.
They knew.
They knew. Good for them.
No.
Good for them. All right.
They beat
Well,
Boston like 8-1 today, so that ain't gonna go well.
All right. Well, not a whole lot else left to follow up on. We'll round it out with some NFL news, which really there's really two big stories. There's a couple other ones legality wise, but we don't need to get into those two really. Just dumb football players being dumb football players. Those you can read about are we don't really have takes on those other than, maybe don't do that type of stuff. The new kickoff rule was officially signed and will be used. Is it just this year, or are they doing that going forward?
I mean, it'll start this season.
Right. But for some reason I read that they're like testing it.
Well, yeah, they'll do it for this season. They'll reconvene after they do all their stat numbers to see, how effective was it, whatever those nerds do. But
that weird data analytics.
Yeah, that weird Amazon data thing that they have a deal with. I don't know.
But for those that don't know, which I think we kind of talked about in our last episode, but if you don't, if you watch the UFL, formerly the XFL, formerly the AAF, formerly the XFL again, all of those spring ball things, that was essentially the kickoff rule that they introduced, where mainly everybody lines up on the kicking team, and then they stay put until the ball is kicked. And then it's basically kind of like a zone system, where if it's a touchback, it comes out, I think, way further than before. But then the idea is that you're trying to get more returns, which,
correct.
If you watched any of the UFL this last week, there were some pretty exciting returns. I don't think it's gonna be a weird change seeing it in the NFL just for how long the regular kickoff has gone on, in my opinion. But I do think it's going to be a cool, welcome change in the sense of bringing some of that excitement on the special team side of things back. So, and I mean, that's the only thing they're bringing from the UFL, not the weird 3-point, conversion and stuff like that. So, that, and then I think the biggest news, unless you guys have any more on the kickoff stuff.
No, I mean, it's just meant to encourage, like you said, more returns, punish touchbacks.
And I think this last year they said that was a total of like 38%, and that might even be high, of kickoffs even returned in general. So that was like the lowest it's ever been. So they're, doing this to to bring some more excitement into the game, which is great. And also it's supposed to help promote safety so that, you don't have 11 players just going full. I mean, you will have them, but not as full bore, I guess. Like it's not supposed to be just a straight up sprint to try and give the next player CTE in one hit. So,
Right.
So yeah, then I guess the other big news was Stephon Diggs is going to the Houston Texans for, in my opinion, scraps.
Yeah.
Like the Bills are just like, we'll just take some draft picks.
A whole second-round pick in 2025.
Like, that's it?
Wild.
Obviously, he's still a good receiver. Don't get me wrong. I mean, his first couple years in Buffalo, I mean, he always kind of starts out as like he starts really good every season, especially like his first couple years in Buffalo. Then he'll just kind of taper off as the season goes on and not do as well. But I mean, he's still a leading top 10 receiver in the league, I think. Just I mean, it's a good fit, I think, especially going to the Texans.
The Stroud boys.
The Stroud boys, yes. Sorry, the Stroud boys. He might take a hit in receptions just because you pair him with Tank Dell. Hopefully he's going to make a full recovery by the start of the season. And then Nico Collins showed a lot of flash this year, being a top number 1 receiver for the Texans. So I mean, you got a good wide receiver core group there for the Texans going forward. So he might take a hit in receptions. He also might beat the other two in terms of getting more receptions. It just kind of remains to be seen, but. Yeah, the Texans have made some moves this offseason.
Texans are going to be good this next year.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say
They're
good.
Fun to watch.
I think Texans are going to be I think they're just going to be scarily good. And they might not necessarily even like be the barn burning team to watch or anything like that. I was making the comment to somebody today. It was like, if I had somebody come to me and say, what's a team that I should cheer for? I've never cheered for football, like NFL football in my life. I'd be like Texans. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. As in, like, if I was going to give them just a baseline team, like obviously I'd say the Eagles, but like if I was going to give them a baseline team of like, here's a team that is neutral, in my opinion, that you should cheer for, Houston.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be fun.
Absolutely. So that was kind of the big trade. Again, I'm biased for fantasy reasons, but
I think it's good.
He's got to do well because of my 2 keeper leagues that I have him in.
Well, I'm always a big Diggsy fan.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Yes,
I do also think, not that I think he was struggling in Buffalo, but I think the change of scenery for him will Buffalo, kind of like reinvigorate him.
They had the whole offensive coordinator change too in the middle of the season, coincidentally after Denver beat them.
I mean, we're only 2 seasons removed from when he went like majorly off, and he had he was the top receiver that year, or it was like the top 3 or whatever. So I mean, he's still not a bad receiver by any stretch.
No. But I mean, he's getting up there to where like he might not be totally past his prime, but he probably on the descend for sure. Unless he proves us wrong this next year, but I think
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
he's fun to watch.
He's very fun to watch.
And the Houston Texans aren't going to bother me as an Eagles fan. So
yes. Before we get to your F1, Zach, NCAA football. Not much in terms of like big news. I mean, it's just spring ball for a lot of teams. At least local wise for Nebraska. I mean, you can go to basically any local beat reporter on Twitter. They have like the 20-minute open practice sessions once or twice a week, and you're not going to see much out of those clips, but you get to see like Dylan and Kalen and the new transfer wide receivers, running backs, just kind of up to speed, learning the system, watching them ball out. But Coach Rule implemented that new like spring team competition.
League,
the spring league competition, and probably a little bit unconventional and untraditional compared to like what most teams do for spring football, but I think it's a way for Rule to kind of keep guys competitive during kind of the spring and off season. He's the way I read, I think it was Mitch Sherman of The Athletic, how he kind of phrased it was, Rule is always trying to, get his guys to keep being competitive whether it's on the field, off the field, and these little things, these little type of leagues, competitions. Last year they kind of had like the point competition or competition week or whatever, where like, you attend so many events, you get so many points. It's like, it's a competition to see, how many points you can get and kind of win the league. And that's kind of what the spring league is too, is, it's a way to make spring ball a competitive type thing where, it's all leading up to the spring game and that giant scrimmage. But, I think Rule is trying to implement, like, no matter what we're doing, whether it's on the field, off the field, like it's all part of a competition. It's all part of a team being competitive and trying to stay competitive, because once the season starts, it's always going to be competitive. But, why is it just during the season you be competitive and not during the off season? He's trying to implement that into his players, that stay competitive no matter what we're trying to do, and that's how we're going to build the best team going forward.
Well, they went whole hog on that, because they have like a whole trade system and everything set up. Like it's a really neat idea. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah,
it's cool from a fan perspective too.
Oh yeah,
you can actually be more involved in like the spring goings ons rather than
they're practicing.
They're just practicing. So, yeah, I mean it's a way to make it more than just a practice for the spring and just to keep guys in shape and the spring game going on and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's been nice just to see the little Twitter clips of Dylan throwing the ball, Kalen throwing the ball.
It's been nice seeing actual quarterbacks throw the ball.
Yeah,
that's not. I mean, that is a bit of a slight to our last quarterbacks, but like, they had a clip of like Glenn Thomas, the new quarterbacks coach, and they had him, walking between all the quarterbacks and doing stuff, and he even had Harburg like throwing balls and looking more natural in the pocket, which they're the pocket, quote unquote, like it was him pretending there's one there, but still, like even that little move, hopefully it pays off in dividends. But like even just watching him be even more natural in that pocket, even if he is third string, it's just like, this is good. Like you can see growth. And I think one of their big things, if you watch that thing, is Glenn Thomas keeps saying like, we're chasing three. Well, how many games have we lost in the past 3-4 years by just
three.
By three or less, by a score? And so that, to me, along with like the spring ball stuff, is showing that Rule is like very keen on not only taking the idea of improvement, but rather than being like, we just need like one more player or whatever, we just need one thing to bounce our way. How do you train your players to think to go out and get that one more play? And so, like a lot of people are saying like, well, this is the same old we've heard. It is, but it's in a more actionable way.
Right.
So rather than saying, oh, we just need, rather than being like, we just need one play to bounce our way, which is determined at that point on luck, you're telling your players, you need to go and get that, and you can do it, and we're going to teach you how to do it, but you need to go and get that score, that 3 points or whatever. So,
right.
I'm just excited for football, and it's April. What are we doing?
What we are going to do before we get to F1, Zach, is I know you might not even have this in your scorebook thing, but it is Masters week for golf.
It is Masters week.
And if we just want to quickly throw out maybe who we think is going to win, or if we're just going to say the course is going to win because it's Augusta National.
Yeah,
Tiger.
well, yeah.
Oh, Tiger, after coming off another injury and not playing since last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, if he won again, like that 2019 run was pure.
Right.
It was amazing, and I mean that's one of the more memorable golf events I've watched. Even though I'm a Jordan Spieth guy, but I mean, watching Tiger just win and it's like it was such a euphoric feeling. And then if he did it now, or even like in the future in a couple of years, like it's going to be the same thing. It's just like this, it'll be like a Caitlin Clark effect type thing where like people tune in because it's still Tiger Woods. It's still like the household name in golf. To watch him win, not just the tournament, but like a major in the Masters, it was incredible in 2019. And then if it were to happen again, it would be just on top of that too.
I refuse to bet against Tiger Woods in golf. So until further notice.
I mean, I don't want to pick a Liv guy, but like Liv now has Dustin Johnson and John Rahm and Brooks Koepka, the top guys in the world of golf right now. But, I'm always biased. Like I said, I'm a Jordan Spieth guy, so I'm always going to stick with Jordan Spieth. And he does really well at Augusta for some reason every single year. Doesn't win anything else, but like he's been like the top 5 the past 4 or 5 years. But that might be Brooks this year. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say
he might break through.
I was going to say, okay, so I have a bold take, but I'm not going to say he's going to win. I think he's going to do really well and be like in the top 3 maybe.
Right. Because you're going with Tiger too?
No. 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 God dang it. Who was I thinking?
John Rahm.
No. Hold on.
Scotty Scheffler. He's also another really good pick. I mean,
Scotty Scheffler was one that I was thinking.
He's been tearing it up.
Oh, Ricky Fowler. That's who I was thinking.
That's a really dark horse sleeper pick.
But I think, he had a pretty decent year last year. He didn't necessarily blow the stands away from everybody, but like there were a couple times where people were like, okay, he's finally like getting into his form. I think he did enough last year to finally kick himself into gear. I think Fowler could do some damage. Again, I don't think he's going to win.
Right.
I hope I'm wrong because I actually do like Ricky Fowler, but I don't think I think he'll do really well.
Or you just say the course will win and Augusta National will win because
that's the easy way out, Andy. That's no fun.
Well, because it's one of the hardest courses.
It's a good way to start though.
Start
that way and go downhill. So
go Tiger.
Go Tiger. All right, and that's talking golf.
Golf. I am excited though because it means golf season's finally back. If it would finally just be consistently nice up this way, then I'd go more often. But all right, well, I'll keep my
85 tomorrow.
Lucky you. We don't get that. It's like 65 and wind. 65 is nice. It's plenty golf weather, but then when you pair it with like 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, like you go to hit the ball off the tee and it just comes back and smacks you in the face. So never actually happened to me, but I could see it with the wind we've had lately. All right. Well, I will keep it quick with my Formula One. But since the last recording, we've actually had 2 races. So I'd say a lot has happened, but not really. It's more the drama behind the sport that people really pay attention to, I think, because of course, the last race, which was Japan, Max Verstappen did Max Verstappen things and won, and then Sergio Perez, who's also his teammate at Red Bull, got second. So they got a 1-2 to finish off the race. So really, as a new F1 fan, if you're following along the journey as I am, the fun part of the season and the races to watch is in the midfield, which, midfield to me is like 5 to 10 in terms of places. But Team McLaren, Team Aston Martin, groups like that, they're the fun ones to watch because there's a lot of movement in the middle of the pack. But then going back to Australia real quick before I get too far into that stuff, Max Verstappen actually didn't even finish the race after lap 4. What? He had to retire the car. So that was fun. His brake, what was it? The brake pad or something. Basically, the brakes, the way they work on the car, like just blew up. And so he's like, oh, I can't stop, which turns out in racing is a key component to racing. Like who thought going as fast as you could requires you to slow down in certain cases. But yeah, they didn't necessarily want him to just keep running his car. And also fire mixed with fuel that goes in a car usually isn't good. So they had to get him off the track pretty quick. So yeah, he actually didn't end up winning that race. The Ferrari team took that one with Carlos Sainz winning that one, that was a pretty exciting race when I went back and watched it, just in the sense it was like, oh, and then Red Bull, teammate of Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, got like 7th. So people were like, oh, like, so if Red Bull doesn't actually show up to a race, like the races are once again like competitive, which is one thing, because when you look back at the history of F1 too, and the little bit that I've, looked back statistically, F1 is all about dominance. You got Lewis Hamilton that did it before Max Verstappen. You got, Sebastian Vettel was one, I think. I don't know if he was necessarily dominant, but he was very good. It's a sport that's been built on dominance, and it's just Red Bull's turn. So again, back to that. I think the teams for me that I've been watching will be McLaren. Next year will be Ferrari because Lewis Hamilton will move from Mercedes to Ferrari, which I think is going to be a good move for him, especially with how Mercedes is doing this year. Yeah, and then the real kicker is Carlos Sainz, who's had like out of the last 4 races, 3 of his best that he's had in recent memory. Doesn't have a contract for next year yet. He's currently jobless when it comes to the end of the year. So it's kind of crazy to think that the guy that's showing up and putting in the work, he will, like, it's pretty well at this point. Like, some team will be like, we want you to come drive for us. But where he goes is very interesting. And the worst part is you get farther down the team grid, it's not good. Like, once you get out of the top, like 3 or 4 teams, there's some rough driving there. So there's a lot. Yeah, really. The only other big story that came out of Japan was Yuki Tsunoda took 10th place, which garners the point for, I believe, the team's RB. It's like a Red Bull affiliate or something. I don't quite know all the team names yet as well as I should, I guess. But it was fun because, of course, as he started in like 11th, dropped to 14th or something like that at one point, came back and got 10th. And yeah, he had a really good race. And he was that one was fun because it was his home track, if you will. So he got a standing ovation as he crossed the finish line. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And so then as of this recording, there's no race this weekend. So you won't even get to hear about it next week either, because that's when the next one is, and we'll record before the race happens. So, yeah, that's Formula One at this point. Formula One's going to get a lot more fun in the off season. Maybe we'll even see if I keep up with it at that. I mean, I'll keep up with it, but we'll even see if it becomes a recurring segment at that point. But I think that's it. I know I didn't get any plays of the week, so I failed on that regard.
I think we all did. There was a lot. I mean,
we were playing a lot of catch up. You don't need to know what our plays of the week are.
There's been a lot of plays that have happened.
Yeah. So
I will reluctantly say congratulations, Andy, on winning the Sportsball bracket challenge.
The Sportsball bracket.
Good job, Andy. Oh, so speaking of that,
picking the chalk favorite of UConn really did well.
I would like to point out, for some reason, when I started filling out my bracket, here
comes the excuse train.
No. My bracket that I thought I filled out for that just went on its own. Like, here, you're part of the ESPN bracket challenge. The one that I filled out for ours, like I was like save, and then for some reason, like I must have done something on the internet or whatever. Like my internet must have cut out at that point, and so it saved it with me not saving anybody. So I have a bracket that's just 0% right because it didn't fill anybody out, and that's the one that was submitted to the Sportsball. I'm like, what the heck happened? Like, how did this? What? Like, I don't know what I did. So then I was like, oh, I'll just submit it again, not like to the Sportsball bracket. I thought I was in there, and then I found out I just did it just on its own. So I got dead last. So
Zach got 0 points, and he just wants you to think that he actually didn't pick every single game incorrectly.
I can prove that I picked a lot wrong because I had North Carolina winning. So either way. All right, boys. Well, this is our longest episode of this one.
A lot to catch up. But I mean, I think, what to look forward to, obviously, like we mentioned, Masters Week this weekend. Outside of that, I mean, I think a lot of it is just probably baseball. I will probably record before probably the week of the spring game, because the spring game's the 27th. So I'm guessing our next episode will be during the week of the spring game. Would be my guess. So we'll probably talk more about
lead up
to that next episode. But yeah, outside of like the Masters and baseball, it's kind of what you got to look forward to, and this is the fun dead season of the year. So
dead to us right now.
Yeah, the NBA and NHL playoffs will be started by next time we talk. So we'll have more to talk about then too.
I'm gonna be honest, I can't wait for playoff hockey. It's gonna be fun.
Oh, playoff hockey is top tier, easily.
Love it. Anything from you guys? Anything else from you guys?
No, that's really about it.
All right. Well, Sportsball is back. So I want to thank you. wanted to say thank you for tuning in. If for whatever reason you may have skipped ahead and just got past the awkward intros that we always are so good at, just remember, bi-weekly now for a while. So our next episode, this episode will be out as of this recording, will be out on the 12th. Next episode will be out on the 26th, barring any emergencies, of course. So, be prepared for that. We won't be around next week, but still send in any things that you want us to talk about. If there's anything else we missed. And as always, I was joined today by Andy and Nate, and I am Zach, and we are the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports. And we'll see you all next time.